making a video. Yeah, yeah, camera. Alright. Yeah. I have notes. Actually, pretty good ones. Yeah, I do want to reduce this to something written. There'll be a few phrases that'll be the key phrases, so I think I'll just say those, the key argument points. And so it's sort of a response to the nihilist argument, which is an ironic argument anyway. I mean, I saw some comment on someone else's video where someone called me the nihilist. You know, what sense does that make? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? And really the argument is I'm a nihilist because I believe that we're squandering and wasting value, which obviously doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, we're obviously in a negative condition, which is a value condition, and therefore it can't justify or defend our continued existence because we're not satisfying this obligation to be productive. We actually have to be productive. And if we're not, you're not satisfying the necessary conditions for continuation. Duh. But I mean, that's just, they're so bad. These people are just so fucking philosophical. They're just philosophical pussy. You know, they don't take it at all seriously. They just play with it. They're posers. You know, philosophical posers. They know nothing about what the core of this whole word thing is. And words have meaning. And they're just playing semantics games. And, you know, Hathaway is disgraceful in his abuse of language to evade things that just can't be evaded. And he keeps doing it in spite of making arguments. And I guess that's what this video is provoked by. It's clear they are despicable liars. And they will evade and pretend. They'll contrive. So that they'll not only contrive offenses against them, they will contrive all kinds of excuses to pretend that there wasn't a contract, that somebody didn't make an agreement, that somebody didn't say something. It's just so evil. You know, bad. Bad. Seriously, it's bad to do that. And you ought to grow the fuck up. In some other direction except wide. So anyway, so yeah, there's just some simple arguments here. He's arguing that somehow it hasn't been demonstrated or proven, this value thing, that there's no real argument in defense of it. There's just some sort of arbitrary, erroneous, you know, magical creation of it, and there really isn't. We're all, I am going to repeat myself a little, but I'll just say, look, the experimental evidence is conclusive. I've done the experiment. I'm doing it right this minute, and the experiment is repeatable. You can put sentience, the capacity to feel, to detect the temperature of value in any organism, and it will be able to do this. Detect the temperature. It will be able to tell the difference between the bad sensations and the good sensations. It will know when the state has been degraded. Okay, so we could say the state of degrade. It'll certainly know better from worse, and it'll know, good from best. It'll know these things every time. It's a reliable mechanism. And he's basically denying that evidence exists in the billions of sentient creatures existing on Earth right now. That there's absolutely no evidence that they're not detecting a difference in state, in conscious state, and that these states do exist. They are specifically a brain configuration. So anyway, so that's the first statement, is that the experiment is conclusive. If you do consciousness, you're not going to be confused about the difference, the cavern of difference between the worst sensations and the best sensations. Okay? There's going to be a cavern of difference between those two things. 0 degrees, 9 million degrees. You will tell the difference. And that no matter who we make into a thermometer, a value thermometer, they're going to experience that. That's the nature of consciousness. It's intrinsic to the event. And the event is a brain configuration, right? That's what it is. It's a configuration of brain. And then when a brain is in that state, let's just say I torture someone, and then I cut their head off, but they maintain the sense of torture. And I just have their head floating in space, experiencing torture. There's no missing it. I mean, I could even use that stupid movie, the last Prometheus, where they have the alien head, which doesn't make too much sense, right? They stick a little neural probe or whatever they call it, and all of a sudden it's alive after 5,000 years. And this is a story about eternal life or something, because the old fucking guy is trying to live forever, and well, why doesn't he have just a neural probe stuck in his fucking head? Right? So anyway, the movie's plot flaws everywhere. But anyway, I mean, incredible plot flaws. But anyway, preposterous plot flaws. Distracting roaming is dangerous. The point is if I do that, there's no reasonable argument. You don't reasonably say, that's nothing. That head being tortured, floating in space, is a non-event for which we should take no notice. It is of no significance. If it replicated and made 10 zillion heads like that, there would be no reason for the Starship Enterprise to go pursue it and blow it up. No reason whatsoever. No badness there at all. Come on. And he doesn't have a counter-argument. He hasn't counter-argued any of this basic fact that there is such a thing. The universe actually makes it. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. But it's just a fact of existence in this universe that there are configurations of matter that are intrinsically bad. And that configuration is a neural network being tortured. It happens. It's an event, and it's real. And the experiment has been done. I'm doing the fucking experiment. I mean, you're arguing with me, it's not happening, and I'm saying, I'm doing the fucking experiment, jackass. I can see the cavern of difference between feeling good and feeling bad. And your counter argument is what? Make one. Have the balls to say I'm deluded, okay, or that I don't exist, or say something. But to use semantics as a counter-argument? Bad doesn't mean bad. It's only a 3-letter word. It's only a B and an A and a D and a B and an A and a D don't mean anything. They're not bad, so how could bad be bad? Because bad's made out of 3 letters that don't have any value component. Fuck you. His argument really is that insipid. Alright, so that's the first statement. The experiment is done, it's a repeatable experiment. This is not some subjective crap. This is actual detective work, actual declarations about the configuration of the universe. That's what these statements are, this testimony, he calls it. Well, the testimony is just as valid as a man going to the moon and walking on it and saying, look, the dust is 3/4 of an inch thick. That's the testimony. It's rock solid. It's not arbitrary or erroneous or made up or any of that bullshit. It's a real event, and it's real description of the reality. Okay, now if I say me likey pink balloon, okay, go ahead and argue that one all day long. That doesn't mean anything beyond the fact that I personally like pink balloon. But it doesn't mean pink balloon is good. So what we express, how we express value, what people testify to, what they personally value, has nothing to do with this conversation about the existence of real value. The existence of a cavern of distance between the best feeling and the worst feeling. That fact statement, that claim, has nothing to do with people's claims about how much they like pizza, or how much they hate Jews. Those claims are different claims. You understand? They're not the same claim, idiot. All right. All right. So we've established. Look, I think beyond reasonable contention that there are brain configurations. There are brain configurations that are good and bad, pleasure and unpleasant, torturous. Let's just go with pleasure and torturous. And that this has been established through extensive experimental evidence. Extensive. Yeah. So, cavern of distance, extensive evidence. It's established that it exists. Now let's have a conversation about what humans do to that fact. Okay, through what they express, through what they say, versus what they understand. Okay, their understanding is superficial. So let's get to the understanding of where you are. So speaking of I've been watching some old Star Treks because, you know, it's part of my history. Anyway, I was alive when they made that show. 8 years old, but I was alive. It's incredible when you think about how old that thing is. I mean, really, you know, it is not nearly as bad as it seems, you know, when you take into account the context. They made that show before we landed on the moon. I mean, fuck. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so let's get to, there's only like 3 facts here. So the first fact is there's it's intrinsic to the configuration of matter, this creation of value. Torture exists. It's a manifestation of configurations of brain, and those configurations are intrinsically not good configurations. They generate not goodness by existing. Okay, and so then it's the playing field argument. You know, what is this thing, this bad brain configuration? Where does it exist? Well, it exists in a pool of configuration. We exist as a thing, an entity called life on Earth in one broad sense. You could say life in the universe, but yeah, obviously we can't detail that if it exists at all, or consciousness in the universe. So there's always this association between the word life and the word feeling life. And that's a mistake, right? That's just a mistake of language. And so I guess if I say the word life, I'm not talking about bacterium. I'm not talking about anything without neurons. I'm talking about things with neurons that experience, that have sensations as part of their toolkit. That's the playing field. That's the dimensions of the playing field is the pool of these things doing this thing. There's no point in having a million floating heads in space and saying, I'm only going to account for that one. Okay? Yeah, that one's important, the rest are irrelevant. That would be illogical, to use a Spockianism. Incredibly illogical. So fucking illogical that your brain has to be considered fundamentally broken. Right? It's like there's a pool of vomit on the floor and you pull out your tweezers and pull one little piece of vomit out and say, there, I cleaned it up. That's how ludicrous it is as a proposition to live this life like as if there's not a much other vomit that needs cleaning. It's ludicrous, insipid. It has no merit as a cognitive thought. It has no connection to reason or logic to make such a claim. So these assholes saying life is about me are assholes. They're as dumb as an anus. They have the intellectual capacity of an anus. Because, yeah, that's not the game you're in. The game you're in is the game of all the brains floating in this space. And that's just the way it is. It's another fact. You can't change it. You can't undo it. That's the playing field. That's the world that matters. The individual little matterings can't separate themselves from their impact on the other matterables. It's just that simple. Okay. So, established fact number 2. Okay, the game is bigger than your brain. Your welfare is not the definition of life on Earth or life in the universe. And it is the definition of the collective state of existence. If you're going to talk philosophically about life and what it means, or feelings and what it means, or sentience and what it means, or intelligence and what it means, then you have to talk about it in terms of its whole body, so to speak. You can't talk about it, my fingernail did it. It's stupid. Alright. Right. So I'll relate that to sort of an observation I had. Okay, so I think this is simple enough, right? And then we can go through all these semantical words about what exactly constitutes a bad state, but I think it's a diminished. I mean, I could go through the words: a lesser, an inferior, a damaged, a harmed, a unimproved, a hostile, a discomforting, an uncomfortable, a torturous, a harassing, obnoxious, painful, unpleasant. You know, we can go through all these little words. Well, I'm not going to do that in this video, but I mean, certainly you can write them all down. You can say, look, this is what we're talking about. And that is the establishing of the fact that this condition is the lesser condition is just a fact. And that the lesser condition is clearly, cavernously meaningful. It's not a minor difference. It's not a meaningless difference. It's the most meaningful thing we could observe in the universe. The difference between torture and pleasure. Ecstasy. Alright. So back to what humans do to this fact. Being selfish little cunts that they are, dumb bugs, they sit here and experience this capacity to feel, and then they just personalize it, and they just say, they convert into what they want, what they feel they want. So that's the first thing they do. It's a felt want, a desire. And then they can, if they're thoughtful at all, they'll understand that their wants are sometimes very impulsive, and they're only going to want something for 30 seconds. And if they wait 30 seconds, they won't want it anymore. Like I could want possibly to die. Alright, 30 seconds later, maybe I don't want him to die. Because at one moment I'm angry, and then 30 seconds later I'm not quite as angry, and I say, okay, he's just a dumb fuck, and blah, 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 and I make excuses for his behavior. So we already know that what we want, most of the time, many of the times, is vaporous. I mean, if we let it, like smoke, it will dissipate. It will float away. This want that I thought was important will float away, and it'll no longer be a need to my comfort. My comfort will be obtainable without what I thought I needed or wanted. So we know that's intrinsic human quality. I mean, that's fundamental to the device. It's been built by evolution to be a selfish device, and this is what it does. It thinks selfishly. And but you know, we are educatable, and we are educated to the fact that this is the difference between being smart, intelligent, and being stupid, is understanding these little facts about how our brains work, and understanding that I get that. I learn from my life, okay, that this is how it works. Okay, you do enough Christmases and you figure out, you know, this might just not be a good idea. It just creates a bunch of expectations, and then you get stuff, and it breaks, and then you feel disappointed, and then you need the attachment, and you don't have the attachment. The attachment is $43, and you know, it's sometimes just a huge negative experience in the end. But anyway, but that requires thought. You have to think, and people don't like to think because that's not yummy. But anyway, all right. So then we can talk about need. And we can say, okay, let's not talk about what people want, because we know their wants are vaporous shit, completely controlled by culture and other bullshit, and doesn't really mean much. So let's talk about what they need. And so, again, we're in trouble, because they're going to say, I need to survive. So anyway, I want to go back to Star Trek. I mean, I'm going to get there anyway. This is a very, I'm on this little chain right here, and it's a very simple chain. But you go, well, I'll just give you the flat words, right? You go from want to need. We think survival, but no, it's not survival, it's thriving. And then thriving is the same as prosper, right? And that's when I thought of Vulcan. And I said, okay, this whole, this whole Vulcan thing, live long and prosper, right? Well, that's really not what a Vulcan would say, right? If we were to do Vulcan right, make real Vulcans, first, they wouldn't be so pissy and obnoxious. There's no reason not to have a little bit of a sense of humor. You do have to communicate with things. You do have to get your point across, and they're like obnoxious to getting their point across because they'll do it in such a rude and obnoxious manner. But anyway, so that part was just superfluously stupid. They threw that in. Making them cranky was just, making logic look like logic is uncomfortable. Well, fuck you. It doesn't have to be. But anyway, this whole live long and prosper thing, right, is just not. That's not the thing a Vulcan would say. Because personally prospering is not the gain. It's not the game. So, the game is live long and be productive. That's what a Vulcan should have said, or would say. If you made a logical organism, this is what it would say. Be productive. It wouldn't even care about the live long part, because again, what's the difference? Okay, I mean, there's 7 billion people on Earth. I mean, how long you live is just so irrelevant. I mean, because we're all replaceable. We can just make a new one anytime. We're snowflakes. Okay, uniqueness is all fancy and dancy and interesting, but guess what? Just like snowflakes, when you have enough of it, it just doesn't make a goddamn difference. And there's no value in perpetuating something unless it's productive. So the more productive a thing is, the more justification it has for surviving. Yeah, that's really all that matters. But I mean, to be productive, you sort of have to be of minimal personal comfort. I mean, if you're actually being tortured as you're being productive, so you're doing some good, but you're personally experiencing a tremendous amount of bad, well, then it's all about how much good you're doing. So if the only good you're doing is you helped an old lady across the street, well, quite obviously, we all know that that productivity wouldn't be worth getting hit by a car and being paralyzed for 100 years. That would be stupid. That wouldn't be productive, because your own welfare is so harshly compromised that that negative value is greater than the positive value of helping the old lady across the street. Now, those value judgments, many of the ones people make, are reasonable. We look both ways before we cross the street. It's inconvenient and annoying, but we do it. Why? Because that little bit of pain is worth the gain of not getting run over. And that's the kind of stuff we do logically all the time. We endure a little bit of inconvenience or suffering or detrimented state. We have a needle stuck in us and chemicals injected because it's going to make us feel better in the long run. We will gain comfort in net. The net product will be good. And that's what we're after. That's logical. So anyway, so it's this word productive. And in this world, as I've stated before, which Hothday has no counter-argument that is all in any form reasonable, is that there are 2 ways to be productive. One way is to keep this brain from being in a tortured state, and the other way is to keep other brains from being in a tortured state. That those 2 things are the same thing. Preventing my broken leg is just as valuable as preventing someone else's broken leg. I'll say that again. Preventing my broken leg is just as valuable as preventing someone else's broken leg. It's a fact. It's not debatable. It can't be rationally unwoven as a non-truth. It's a fucking fact. An explicit, simple, durable, made of steel, factual description of our circumstance. That broken leg is broken leg. In terms of generic. In terms of a generic thing. A packet of pain is a packet of pain. It exists, and it just doesn't matter what brain is experiencing it. And if you can eliminate it, it's a good thing. Unless it's doing something. Unless it's being productive. Unless the pain is the pain someone's feeling while they're looking both ways before they cross the street, yes, you get rid of it. Unless it has some productive value. Like the pain of prisoners or something. Their pain is a necessary pain because we have to deter their evil, nasty, bad behavior, their unproductivity, their compulsive desire to be unproductive, to take instead of to give. Alright, so that's about it. So in there you have the story. There's nothing. This is philosophy. This is the accurate description of our circumstance. We are individual pieces of value detectors. We're individual value detectors. Value creators in essence. Detecting is creating in a sense. The thing doesn't exist until the thing. It's like the book exists, but it doesn't mean anything or have any blah 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 until something opens it and reads it. And we're the reading of the book of value. We create it by reading it, in a sense. I don't want to get too metaphorical, but then he'll just use that argument and make an argument against the metaphorical arguments instead of the explicit argument that's been made. That all sentient beings experience, and that their experiences constitute pleasant and unpleasant experiences. There's no sentient being that doesn't know the unpleasant and pleasant. It's the nature of sentience. And the pleasant is the superior, better state. And by that simple statement, you automatically have a incentive and a obligation to improve conditions. Not complicated. All right. So yeah. So this word productivity, and so how? What form does productivity have? And the most obvious form of productivity is to prevent the harm, prevent the torture, prevent the known bad condition. Because most of the satisfied condition you have to concede is, I think another fact you have to concede is there seems to be a huge tendency, a substantial tendency for your comfort level to go up, your ecstasy level to go up as you remove impediments. That it's really the pollution of the bad apples. And once you take the bad apples out, you don't have to put good apples in. It's just an ironic truth that there's no such thing as good, there's just not bad. And so the idea is to not bad the human condition or the sentient being condition. So that's our Star Trek mission, to not bad the condition of the universe, to find bad in the universe and not bad it. To boldly go and not bad the universe. Yeah, that's productive. That's the only legitimate defense for a life, is you made it less bad. The world would be more bad, okay, if you didn't exist. That's the only way you can justify your existence, is you would have to be able to state with some sort of confidence that the universe would be more bad if you're not here to fix it. And that's the truth of existence. You're either breaking it or you're fixing it. There's no other choices. Well, I mean, I suppose you can be a complete nothing. I mean, a neutral. You made no difference. But that kind of make no difference still couldn't justify existing because it still doesn't have a reason, okay, to exist. You can't defend doing nothing. I mean, it's impossible to make a defense for nothing, is all I'm saying. The creation of nothing. I need to create nothing. Now, no, you don't even need to make that statement because it's nothing. You can't do anything, so there's no point in even making it. All right. So, yeah, maybe this is enough. So I'm going to take this and this simple diagram and try to make it so glaring that it can't be missed and make these key points. Like I said, the experiment has been done. This is not something that can be doubted by a rational person anymore. Consciousness is a real thing. It's happening in brains. It's real material configurations that are creating it. Okay, whether it's an illusion or not, it doesn't matter. Where, like I said, I mean, there's no way you could personally be alive, sentient, have experiences that range from ecstasy to torture, and not say this is a significant thing, more significant than pen. No way you can't make that distinction. In my opinion, you can't evade uttering that truth reasonably. You can't maintain any kind of notion of intellectual integrity and state you see nothing happening here when you're experiencing torture. No possible way for something to do that. It's just not possible. And you're ludicrous if you're defending that impossible circumstance. And that's what Hathaway is defending. Not just as a rare 1 in a million people argument, but everyone. He's making a blanket statement by the sentient condition and saying it doesn't matter. Torture it all you want, as long as it's not me, of course. And no rational being should find that anything else but offensive and idiotic. Both of those things. It's so preposterously rude to the sentient suffering that's been endured, and it's so fucking dumb that nobody, not even a 5-year-old, should be embarrassed to utter it. Alright, so I think it's enough for this video. So, I think I have defended the dimensions of the playing field for the game of life. I think I have defended the idea that there really is only your net effect on the welfare, period. Not your welfare, but the welfare, period. Whether you've created things on this side of the cavern or you created things on that side of the cavern. What brain they're in doesn't matter. The point is did you create torture or did you create ecstasy? And it just doesn't matter who's experiencing it. And that's a fact. And I haven't heard a single argument from any of these nihilist motherfuckers explaining how that's not a fact. So anyway. Yeah, and the experiment's been done. Hathaway is discounting my statements about what it is to be conscious and calling them a UFO report. That's essentially what he's saying. He's saying I'm reporting a UFO by saying I'm experiencing consciousness. I see a cavern of difference between pleasure and torture. And he's calling that a UFO report. As if I'm saying something completely unsupported, and undefensible, and unvisible to every other sentient being. And I don't think that's what I'm saying. And I don't think it could be, I don't think the accusation could be made by anybody but an evil liar, okay, who says, oh no, that's not my experience of consciousness. I can't tell the difference between being tortured and ecstasy. I don't think anybody can be conscious and say those words honestly. So that's, and those are the arguments he's evaded. So, enough of the video. So till next time and such, till I write this up in some form where it can just be referenced, so then every time he makes a video I'll just wait for him to violate, and it's a violation. I mean, really, these arguments have been made over and over and over, and he keeps ignoring them. And so all you have to, I mean, I'm sort of just made a rule. I didn't even watch most of his last video, but as soon as he crosses the line where, shit, damn it, fuck you, bastard, I've made 10 videos on that subject, and you obnoxiously pretend I haven't. You obnoxiously ignore the argument that's been made, saying that is insipid nonsense you're spouting. No, you can't do that. It's just so fucking rude. And so yeah, so as soon as you cross the line, as soon as you violate and say, okay, I'm going to premise an argument and make the argument that somehow the other side hasn't countered it. No, I've countered it. Either account for the counter and concede that you're an imbecile by my standards, and that's all you can possibly ever be, and I'll never accept your premise because it's ludicrous and nonsensical. So what's the point? Just concede. There's no room for conversation, reasonable conversation, because I've declared you unreasonable, and you're going to have to do the same to me. You're going to have to somehow say it's unreasonable for me to testify from my own personal experience that there's a cavern of difference between the worst and the best feeling. Fuck you, idiot. My scum.